Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me as we do continue with the my least favorite WWF LJN tournament. We are in the semifinals, and that is your last 8 figures. So, we started this tournament off with 32 figures. 16 figures started round 2, and 8 figures down to round 3. Now, depending on the length of this video, if it exceeds 20 minutes, we will not include the finals. So, even though it's just going to be a one-on-one matchup as we enter the finals... No, I'm sorry. I was wrong. It's not the semifinals. Round 3 is just a regular round. So, this is going to knock it down to 4 figures, which will be the semifinals. So, 5 rounds. I misspoke. But again, kind of as a caveat, if the semifinals does take more than 20 minutes to film, I will break that down into 2 videos. So, semifinals in a video, finals in a video. Now, in the past, I have combined them into one, but those videos usually hover around 40-45 minutes, so I'm kind of not wanting to go that route. Anything over 30 minutes, I really try to steer clear of if I can. So, let's dive into this matchup. And we are going to start off with Ric Flair squaring off against Ivan Putski. Next one is going to feature Lex Luger as he does battle against Bob Backlund. Bob Orton is going to square off against Owen Hart. And lastly, Jimmy Snuka will square off against Macho Man. Alright, so first matchup we said was... Where's he? There he is. Ric Flair. And Ric Flair squares off against Ivan Putski. I can already tell you guys, every matchup, every round, I have no idea where I'm going. In fact, up until the last seconds of the finals, meaning when I'm seconds away from choosing my winner, in this case, it's going to be, the winner is actually the loser. But, I don't know. I have no idea where to go with this. Ric Flair comes from my buddy Eric, and for the longest time, he was just kind of like another figure for me. It wasn't something that I gravitated towards, nothing that I really loved or absolutely had to have, but because I was always buying his figures, yeah, Ric Flair, bam, thumbs up, absolutely, let's get him. I just don't know if he can necessarily beat Ivan Putski. Now, the thing about Ivan Putski, I don't have any history with him. I know the name ever since I started collecting and getting back in wrestling. Yes, the name is very famous as a very... I don't know. I wouldn't say that he was a brand name type of deal. What was he called? The Polish... brain freeze. But yeah, Polish wrestler. So, Ivan, all I know about him is the man was wrestled for about 3 decades or so. And, you know, I've said it before with this particular figure. Ivan Putski, I would have had very minimal, if any, real qualms about this figure if it wasn't with this pose. The pose has always killed it for me. If he loses this tournament, or wins this tournament, however you want to describe it, if he ends up being the worst figure ever, it's because of the fighting pose. Now, there's still figures in this tournament, like originals, like Snuka and Orton, who I still think could potentially be the winners as being the worst figure ever. I don't know, man. This has got to be darn close. I've always said I felt like this should be in the very bottom 4. This should have made it to the semifinals as being one of the worst. Last round, he miraculously went up against Mike Sharp, another figure I thought that should be in the semifinals, as one of 4 of the worst figures ever created, whether custom or original figures. At least I grew up watching Ric Flair, WCW and into WWF. You know, his acolytes and achievements in life are freaking outstanding. I've never really been a fan of Ric Flair, though. Like, if I met him in person, yeah, I'd freaking be gaga over him, of course, man. Who wouldn't? The man's a freaking legend. But, like, I was never a fan, and to this day, I'm like, I could appreciate him, but I always kind of, like, reflect on my childhood, and was never that huge. Plus, Ric Flair, I kind of feel like Ric Flair had a habit of ripping off other people's gimmicks or their way of dress. What do I mean? Let's look at the Nature Boy title. There have been, actually, Nature Boy has actually been used several times. And I don't know which territory it was, but maybe Memphis territories. I don't know if it was Buddy Rose or someone was going by the gimmick, but Nature Boy. And Nature Boy, white guy, long blonde hair. And you know what? That guy, when I looked at him, I actually thought that was Ric Flair for like a split second. They almost looked identical. So I think I'm pretty sure Ric Flair got his name after that, long after that. So that's one thing. I kind of feel like Nature Boy in wrestling is like calling someone a duke or duchess, you know? It's their title or something. Lord and lady, etc. Macho Man. He ripped off Macho Man. Macho Man in the 80s was so synonymous for coming down the aisle in these long, lavish, extravagant robes and whatnot. All of a sudden, one day, here's Ric Flair walking down the aisle in these long, extravagant robes. And you know what? I don't know if I can necessarily classify him as a good wrestler. I mean, sturdiness, stability. I mean, to still wrestle and when you're 70 plus years old, I mean, that's pretty freaking phenomenal to be in that kind of shape. Not break your bones, you know, within moments of being in the match. But think about his 92 championship, winning the 93 or 92 Royal Rumble out of the number 3 slot out of all things. Amazing, right? But he always does this thing whenever like headbutt him or, you know, he bounces his face off the turnbuckle or something. He kind of like dance around and then just fall forward. Kind of like see his legs kick back. I don't know. It's just this weird thing. I'm like, you're trying to make wrestling appear realistic, especially to young fans, and that has got to be one of the lamest things in the world. This head sculpt I don't like. I don't think I've ever liked it. I was okay with it. Maybe it didn't cost me a whole lot. I don't remember. And what about the Tito Santana body? Oh my god. Tito Santana body might be worse than Ivan Putski. I don't have any history with Ivan Putski. Like I said, outside of collecting and learning about him later on, that's pretty much all I have about him. But he's still a non-playable action figure. At the end of the day, as a figure first tournament, that is going to play a huge role. If he makes it out of round 4, no, what is this? This is round 3. So, yeah, he's going to the semifinals. I had a feeling from the very beginning that this was going to be a semifinalist. I think the only reason this Ric Flair won is a better figure is because he is a little bit, with the arms out, a little bit more playable. But Tito Santana pose in general, right? You can't really do a solid body slam. The arm down here being so low, you can't really do it. He's basically a one-punch guy only, and no. Ric Flair won by the skin of his teeth. So, Ivan Putski moves on to round 4. Then we've got Lex Luger versus Bob Backlund. Lex Luger, as you guys know, is a figure I had as a kid and didn't enjoy the figure not one bit. You know, we had figures like Ron Simmons and Lex Luger, who both, in my opinion, are two of the worst action figures ever made. You know, go figure that the King Kong Bundy LJN figure, I absolutely love that figure. I love the thickness and bulkiness. I love King Kong Bundy as a wrestler. He was so much fun. Super bad guys, which was fantastic. And even with the arms down, you still make use of it. You still enjoy using the figure. And Lex Luger, to me, with this pose, was nothing more than a DDT character. I've never enjoyed the fact, as a kid, where you kind of had to pretend to throw a punch like that, you know. But the DDT was awesome. Or you kind of do like little flip overs or something. I don't know. It was workable. Let's put it that way. It was still a workable figure. Not enjoyable, but you made use with what you had. Also, because I had Lex Luger as a kid, the Galoob figure, you know, that nostalgia could play a role potentially in my decision for this particular matchup. Play pose alone, yeah, Bob Backlund with the B. Brian Blair pose, fine. My preference with this figure, get rid of wrestler Bob Backlund. Turn this figure into something like I don't know, who was I talking about before? Brother Love. Turn this figure into manager Bob Backlund. Give him clothing. Cover up this hideous rubber. You know, you paint in the jacket and everything, the pants. You don't see this rubber. All you see is the color and detail. That color and those designs would make the figure impressive more than 50%. You could stick with this pose. Why not? You know, still make him a playable wrestling action figure. I've said it all the time. Vince McMahon, LJN, you can use him as a wrestler if you wanted. Okay, Harley Race. He's only as good of a figure as he is because he's got that jacket built on. Honky Tonk Man, $1 Million Man, Hasbro, LJN, it doesn't matter. If they were just boots and trunks, they would be okay. But with that added detail and design of the clothing, it makes the figures pop 1,000,000 times better. It makes them that much better because of those clothing. So, looking at this color scheme and this terrible rubber, I kind of felt like Brother Love, if he was, like, let's say he was a wrestler, and they used that same rubber, and all he was this design, I feel like that figure would have been bad. I think that rubber would have been as poor as this, but you don't see it because it's colored in with the suit. So, I think this figure would have been 10,000 times better by giving him more detail. And a straight blue, no offsetted colors outside of the orange brown hair. No. The face I never liked. The fighting pose, that's it. That's the only thing that's ever saved this figure. But other than that, he's so simple, so plain. There was a guy that had Bob Backlund in all red, which is actually what I kind of remember him better for. So I actually wanted to buy it. It was on auction. It was like $60 or something. But I've been complaining about Bob Backlund forever. And what would I be if I went out and bought another Bob Backlund figure, even if it was half the price, right? And a different color scheme. At least Lex Luger, just as a figure tournament, this is so thin, and like I said, you move these hands, you see this big gash right here in the arm, and that's only from doing that. So, rubber's poor. Rubber on this Lex Luger is solid, nice, strong. No, to me, it's a no-brainer. Bob Backlund is far worse. Bob Backlund is going to the semifinals of my least favorite LJN tournament. Where the heck did I put that one figure? Oh, there he is. Alright, next battle is Owen Hart versus Bob Orton. Bob Orton is a no doubt one of the worst LJNs ever created. Top 10 worst figure. Maybe even a top 5 worst figure. And I've always said, he's been saved by design and accessories. Well, what kind of design? I'm talking about the addition of a vest. The offset colors with the green and black, work really well. And the accessory to the hat. But that is only thing he's got working for him. I felt like, which figure was we looking at? I felt like Ivan Putski had a lot of potential. I think Bob Orton would have had a lot of potential as well. But this, I don't understand this. And sometimes, people let me know, hey, this is for this particular hold, or, maybe that's famous for, like I talk about Hulk Hogan doing the little bend over and in the ring thing. I don't want that. That doesn't mean that made Hulk Hogan a terrible Hasbro figure in Series 2 because they incorporated that bear hug. And Series 3, what did they do? They just opened up the arms and made it one of the most perfect figures ever. So, and this isn't even a good DDT arm right here. And this, a porch, a chokehold or something. I don't know. I just don't like the figure at all. And when you get this figure on auction, or if you try to do it, buy it now or something, especially if it has the original accessory, you're paying $50, $75, $100 for it. Now, at least it was for me when I started collecting LJNs. And like when I started collecting all the carded figures, right? Like Billy Jack Haynes, for example, Bob Orton, Harvey Race. These were all $500 plus figures. Terry Funk, $500 plus, $750, etc. Today, I'm pretty sure you can win them on auction for probably a couple $100. And it sucks knowing what I paid for a lot of these cards, and knowing that if I were to try to resell them, I probably wouldn't get anywhere near what I paid for them, which sucks. And that's another reason why I refuse to ever sell my personal collection. So it just doesn't make financial sense to take that kind of loss. This is a tough one because the design and color scheme is great. This is high energy Coco Beware and Owen Hart paint scheme, which is fantastic. This is New Hart Foundation with Jim Neidhart. You see, this is your Series 7 Hasbro paint scheme. Meshes well with your Series 5 Jim Neidhart figure from Hasbro, right? Macho Man, I always said, the Macho Man pose, eliminate that. Don't even consider that pose for this particular figure. It all rests on the laurels of the head sculpt, which is terrible. This is not Owen Hart, and it kind of disappointing that one of the best wrestlers of the 90s, and I don't know if I would ever say that Owen Hart is better than Bret Hart. To me, Bret Hart was always far superior, but his execution of technique and moves was great. But like I said, Owen Hart was much better as a high flyer, doing backflips and doing like all these different acrobatics and whatnot, which were fantastic. I liked him better when he became King of Heart, Owen Hart, right? With the black singlet and that little heart over his chest and whatnot. Because back in like the early 90s, or even in the 80s, was he still in the Royal Rumbles in the 80s? Because he'd come out with like this type of suit, so probably, early mid 90s. And I always feel like he'd be like, I don't know, he'd be like a squash guy. Someone that comes in for a few minutes, but not anyone that you take seriously to win the match type of deal, or do any major damage. But shoot, later 90s, King of Hearts on, shoot. That guy was tossing people out all the time. Winner of the Royal Rumble, or not winner of the Royal Rumble, winner of the King of the Ring. Freaking multiple time tag team champion. I think he was European champion as well, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that, but I'm almost positive he was. I don't think he ever won Intercontinental Championship, which was disappointing. And I'm like, hold on, Razor Ramon won it 4 times, but Owen never won it once during that time. Weird. And as I said before, Owen Hart was supposed to actually win the Intercontinental Championship, but he ended up but because of his fall and subsequent death, he never got the opportunity to battle, and it was like a week away. So Jeff Jarrett, his tag team partner, ended up in that Intercontinental Championship and winning, but I think the head gets me. I have a hard time giving like customs, like real, like when you look at like Bob Backlund, right? I don't know if I classify Random Treasures as customizers, right? I haven't really classified them as customizers in over 2 years. And because they have their own brick and mortar store, they have their own ability to print and design these figures, right? Create rubber and whatnot. It's like big rubber guys. Are they customizers? No. They're a legitimate business. So those guys that operate out of their basements, their garages, their kitchens, I have a hard time giving those guys credit for having the worst figure ever, because I don't think it's fair. With that being said, oddly enough, Bob Orton is the better figure. So Bob Orton is out of this tournament, and Owen Hart moves on to the semi-finals. And the last matchup is going to feature Macho Man versus Jimmy Snuka. You see, this right here is almost an impossible choice. Almost too unfair to compete. So, we'll start with Macho Man. Since the very beginning, the first time I ever saw this figure on Random Treasures website, all I could think is, I am killing myself. I am begging myself to love this figure. I just can't do it. Like, nowadays, I'm indifferent to it now that I own it. Like, it's meh. Like, I don't think much about it. But you're taking one of my favorite wrestlers ever. You're giving him one of the worst poses ever designed. Don't call it a commemorative piece. I hate that. No, forget that. This isn't Mattel or Bandai or Hasbro or any of these large-scale toy companies that have been out for a million years. No, don't do that. This is your, or little side note, Hasbro toys, grapplers, and gimmicks with Men on a Mission. They came out with the little figures that they put inside a little plastic baggie to make it look like the Hasbro mailways, and they charge you $150 for those figures, right? And you could have gotten Mo and Mabel individually, those figures right there, for like $39 or $40 a piece. So you're basically charging twice as much just because, and not even a card backing. So I don't like when companies, these little small companies, are reflecting on these figures as commemorative pieces or as mail-away pieces. Don't do that. I don't like that. Now, I could say every company had to start from somewhere, right? Everyone had to start from scratch. So who's to say that grapplers and gimmicks can't become the next LJN or the next Hasbro? We can all hope. I mean, shoot. To be one of the first members to really, get into that line, that'd be freaking awesome. I always said I love this look. This Series 1 Hasbro is beautiful. And they, by offsetting the yellow boots with the white, that's all you gotta do. Imagine if they did that to the Bob Backlund. That could have probably improved it 100%. Well, maybe not 100%, but significantly. This has a chance to be a really beautiful figure. I don't want to take it for what it is. Not in this case. It is not a commemorative piece. It's rubber. It's a action figure. Action figures are for play. And I think so many people get caught up in the idea that people that are buying these are adults and they're not playing with these, so who cares? It's for display only. Irrelevant. I know I'm not alone on that, and, I think that helps when I make my reviews and whatnot. Nah, it could have been better. And then we got Jimmy Snuka. I mean, if Ron Simmons to me is like the worst action figure ever created from Galoob, does that automatically push this one through past a Jimmy Snuka figure that... Well, let's compare playability, right? Both can drop an elbow. Check. Well, that's it for Macho Man. Macho Man has no other fighting attribute. Here, Jimmy Snuka at least can do like a DDT, right? At least his arms, you could actually bring him up. But how often do you want to do that? You know, you're not going to sit there like that, right? You don't want to risk damaging the rubber. So you're going to basically have to punch him like this. And so frustrating. You can't even do a one-arm toss-over. Just, these are just both so bad. Alright, we're getting up there in time, so I'm not even going to talk long. Macho Man's one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. Jimmy Snuka is someone I grew up watching in the 90s, but not anyone I really cared about. I think if I was born in like if I was born 10 years earlier and watching like Piper and Snuka in the 80s, I think maybe Jimmy Snuka would have meant a whole lot more to me. And I think this is another guy that like murdered his family and got away with the type of deal. What was that story? I don't think it was like his whole family. I think it was like either he killed his girlfriend allegedly, or his wife or something. I don't know. Like, I just learned that story probably a couple years ago, 3 years ago, and I'm like, man. And that's such a sour note, because some of these guys that, and even though I've been the biggest Snuka fan, right? I still feel like, I cared about Jimmy Snuka, and hearing that is just terrible. But I guess it was never proven, so did he really do it? I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know what the circumstances were, so. Figure-wise, yeah, Macho Man is gone. He was this close to being among the 4 worst LJN figures ever created. At the end of the day, I kind of look at, well, I can't remember who it was. I think it was the Ric Flair figure versus the Galoob 2-up of Ron Simmons. If that Ron Simmons could be out after round 1, or was it round 2? I think it was round 1 he was out. So if he's not the worst wrestling action figure ever, I can't fathom giving it to Macho Man. Too small, too thin, terrible pose. Just really, design-wise, yeah, I get it. That's his look, but it doesn't do anything for me. So, Jimmy Snuka is in the semifinals. Alright, guys, that is it for now. As always, thank you so much for watching. And, man, this tournament is taking a toll on me. It's a very quick and easy tournament. I've actually filmed this very quickly, but don't get me wrong, I love this tournament. I've enjoyed making it, but it's kind of just taking a toll based on how terrible some of the figures are. Alright, guys, that's it for now. Thanks for watching again, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.